I would have been able to play a big player like Madison or like Ostapenko, but I couldn't because I lost the round before.
Star Alex Eala takes center stage at the BNP Paribas Tennis Paradise in Indian Wells.
Something extraordinary just unfolded in Austrian tennis that has nothing to do with forehands or breakpoints. Days after enduring a crushing 6-0, 6-2 demolition from Karolina Muchova at the 2026 Miami Open, a match that lasted barely an hour, Alex Eala generated a headline that reverberated through the tennis world louder than any scoreline ever could. The instant the Linz Open published Eala's name in their April 6th to 12th tournament draw, tickets started evaporating. Entire session blocks vanished in approximately 60 seconds, leaving the Austrian WTA 500 event completely sold out before most European fans could even refresh their browsers.
And Eala, it's been quite a thrill ride for her this last year as well. She had some great results. I think the international interest in both of them is so high.
Here's the player who just surrendered 270 ranking points, whose serve Brad Gilbert says requires immediate reconstruction, and yet a tournament that's been running since 1987 just experienced its fastest sellout in nearly 4 decades of operation. Dubai went capacity for her back in February. The brand new Philippine Women's Open cleared inventory before she'd even officially entered. At Indian Wells, supporters lined up 6 hours ahead of her second round appearance. Austria simply failed to anticipate the phenomenon. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, because this is exactly the caliber of analysis we deliver consistently. Something fundamental has shifted in women's tennis, and Linz just became the latest venue to absorb the impact. To fully grasp the magnitude of what just transpired in Austria, you have to trace back through the previous 3 months, because the Linz sellout wasn't some isolated incident. It was merely the latest installment in a sequence that WTA tournament directors and broadcast executives have been frantically attempting to comprehend since January. Begin with Melbourne.
Eala from the Philippines could be the next big thing in pro tennis.
This was a massive spot to be in for such a young talent, to have a sold-out crowd completely behind.
To do well on the WTA Tour. I'm super proud of what I was able to accomplish, but the end goal is to win Slam.
When Alex Eala stepped onto court 6 at the 2026 Australian Open for her opening round clash against Alicia Parks, the BBC documented thousands of Filipino supporters flooding Melbourne Park, forming a queue that extended several hundred yards across the grounds. The venue proved inadequate, fans were left standing, and Martina Navratilova publicly stated that Australian Open organizers had committed a scheduling blunder by assigning one of the tournament's most anticipated encounters to a facility wholly incapable of accommodating demand. Eala dropped that match 6-0, 3-6, 2-6, eliminated in round 1, yet the crowd remained indifferent. They'd already secured tickets long before the outcome was determined. And that particular detail carries more weight than the final score, because here's what matters. A player's support typically collapses following defeat. First-round eliminations generally produce silence, not queues stretching hundreds of yards. What unfolded in Melbourne was structurally anomalous. The backing wasn't performance-dependent, it materialized irrespective of results, which precisely describes the audience profile that depletes Austrian indoor clay tournament inventory in 60 seconds before a single match gets scheduled. From Melbourne, the tour progressed through Abu Dhabi and Doha before arriving in Dubai, where Dubai Tennis Championships director Salah Talak delivered an interview prior to Eala's participation that circulated extensively since. Talak explained the dynamics from his box office perspective. Nearly 1 million Filipinos presently reside and work throughout the UAE, with Dubai duty-free alone employing 3,000 Filipino staff members. When Eala confirmed participation, ticket movement was instantaneous. She proceeded to sell out every appearance during a quarter-final campaign, defeating world number 8 Jasmine Paolini 6-1, 7-6 in the third round, before falling to Coco Gauff in the quarters.
Another wonderful win for Alexandra Eala. Thank you, Jasmine, she says. Paolini gracious as ever in defeat. The former champion is out. Alexandra Eala.
This match is headed to the absolute limit. But given Eala's resurgence, she might actually pull off the upset here. Talak's assessment of the circumstances was unambiguous. Having Eala in the field elevates the tournament's commercial profile in ways few active players can currently duplicate. Then Manila arrived. November 2025 saw the WTA unveil the Philippine Women's Open, the first WTA tournament ever conducted in the Philippines. a 125-level competition held January 2026. Final session tickets disappeared before Eala had formally confirmed participation, a tournament partially constructed around the demand she creates. And that demand exceeded the announcement itself. She advanced to the quarterfinals before losing to eventual champion Camila Osorio. In a New York Times interview afterward, Eala identified the Manila tournament as her 2026 season highlight to that juncture, pointing to something beyond tennis. The fundamental reality that a WTA event now existed in her homeland because her ascent had rendered it commercially viable. Indian Wells followed in March, and by then the pattern had become impossible to dismiss. Extensive lines materialized outside Stadium 3 6 hours before her second-round encounter against Diana Yastremska. Hundreds of supporters wore Alexandra Eala fan club apparel and carried Philippine flags, and 2 matches were still scheduled before she even appeared on court.
Lovely respect between the two, but it's Alex Eala who thrives in these matches. She thrives in these...
The atmosphere keeps intensifying, and she's delivered again. Her encounter consumed 2 hours 43 minutes, the tournament's longest that day, concluding near midnight in nearly freezing desert temperatures. A substantial portion of spectators remained through every single point. BNP Paribas Open executive Philippe Dora stated plainly to Front Office Sports that they embraced every moment, benefited tremendously, and actively promoted it. The tournament's highest viewed YouTube content from the 2026 event was a day-in-the-life segment featuring Eala, and the margin wasn't remotely close. The metrics ESPN revealed surrounding the Indian Wells period construct their own narrative. Eala's pre-tournament press conference before the Australian Open accumulated 196,000 YouTube views, while Novak Djokovic's equivalent attracted roughly half that figure.
These tournaments are such great experiences for me, especially playing in front of the best crowd ever, and I do my best. I do what I can, and just if I see an opening.
So young, and she's just coming through, so and obviously the first couple rounds, the schedule.
Carlos Alcaraz, who subsequently captured the men's title in Melbourne, registered less than 1/6 of Eala's total. World number 1 Aryna Sabalenka, a 2-time Australian Open champion, generated 9,000 views for her pre-tournament presser. Eala's Instagram following was nearing 1 million during the Indian Wells reporting period, exceeding double the counts of higher-ranked competitors including Jessica Pegula, Madison Keys, and Amanda Anisimova. Filipino-American sports journalist TJ Manutuk provided the most lucid cultural framework in that front office sports piece, with his assessment being that the Philippines has been anticipating the next Manny Pacquiao. During Pacquiao's prime, the nation essentially halted, roads emptied, commerce suspended, everyone tuned in. Over 10 million Filipinos currently reside beyond Philippine borders, with approximately 1.7 million concentrated in California alone. What appears as a tennis audience to casual observers represents, in actuality, a diaspora mobilizing en masse for the first athlete since Pacquiao, who's genuinely achieved global breakthrough status. That diaspora doesn't remain confined to California. It's present in Melbourne, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and as Linz is discovering, it travels to Central Austria for a WTA 500 indoor clay tournament in April. Now consider what renders the Linz situation uniquely noteworthy beyond the ticketing narrative. This marks Eala's inaugural appearance at a WTA 500 tournament, with her sole previous 500-level participation occurring in Abu Dhabi, where she reached the quarterfinals before falling to Ekaterina Alexandrova 6-3, 6-3.
Of course, the atmosphere in each tournament has been amazing, and it's been a different start this year than any other year I've ever had.
Alex Eala advances to the Dubai WTA 1000 quarterfinals. Sheila Salaysay has that story.
Alexandrova, the defending Linz champion, returns to Austria to defend her title and currently holds world number 11 ranking. The field additionally features Barbora Krejcikova, Emma Navarro, Daria Kasatkina, and Clara Tauson. This isn't a draw she navigates easily. The competition is substantial and formidable throughout. Eala arrives at Linz having surrendered 270 WTA ranking points after failing to replicate her 2025 Miami Open semifinal performance. A campaign that included victories over Iga Swiatek, Madison Keys, and Jelena Ostapenko. This year's Miami exit proved difficult, with Carolina Muchova requiring precisely 60 minutes to complete a 6-0, 6-2 victory that left Eala scoreless in the opening set. Brad Gilbert, former coach of Andre Agassi, Andy Murray, and Coco Gauff, publicly pinpointed her first serve execution as the critical element demanding immediate attention. She converted merely 36% of first serve points in that encounter, and the ranking implications are considerable. Eala is projected to descend toward the 45th to 50th range once updated standings release. At the 2026 season's commencement, she'd climbed to a career-best number 28, and now confronts the clay court swing ranked lower than her Indian Wells entry position. But here's what the ranking descent conceals about clay. She has virtually nothing to protect. Throughout the entire 2025 clay season, Eala compiled a 2-4 win-loss record spanning 4 tournaments. She departed in round 1 at both the Italian Open and French Open, lost second round at the Madrid Open, with the Iasi Open representing her deepest clay run, a round of 16 finish. Points accumulated from that stretch were negligible. Reaching the Linz quarterfinals in 2026 would already exceed her complete 2025 clay production. And from that point forward, every additional victory represents pure ranking advancement with no corresponding deduction. She's discussed clay candidly as a surface, and in her post-Miami remarks described it as the dimension with maximum improvement potential in her game, which interpreted generously also acknowledges she hasn't yet been tested at her performance ceiling on red dirt. The Linz draw provides the opportunity to determine what that ceiling currently represents. The indoor conditions at Design Center Linz may actually favor her circumstances, as indoor clay plays faster and lower than outdoor red clay, diminishing some physical disparity that taller, heavier strikers exploit on slower outdoor surfaces. Her game, constructed around active footwork, sharp returns, and the mental fortitude Andy Roddick has publicly acknowledged on his podcast, translates reasonably effectively to that environment. Organizers are already managing the logistical reality of what Eala's presence signifies for the event, a tournament operational for 35 years without ever confronting this caliber of pre-competition demand now occupies completely unfamiliar territory. Design Center Linz maintains finite capacity, and that capacity is exhausted. For any supplementary accommodation the venue can establish for overflow interest, action must happen immediately. Austria isn't the Philippines. It's not California, Dubai, or Melbourne. There exists no established Filipino community infrastructure in Linz comparable to what filled Court 6 at Melbourne Park or packed Stadium 3 at Indian Wells past midnight.
Hi, I'm Alex Eala. First is I don't know how to ride a bike. Second, I love watching. Super happy with the game, how I played. I think she was a tough opponent, and yeah, tough conditions out there, very hot, but I'm just very happy with the win. It's Alex Eala here. I just wanted to thank you all so much for the support. The atmosphere these past few days have been completely amazing.
Yet the tickets still disappeared. That's the element that should unsettle every other competitor in the draw. The ranking doesn't convey the narrative here. Neither does the recent scoreline nor the serve metrics Brad Gilbert identified publicly. The crowd will materialize regardless of Miami's outcome. The crowd will generate volume, extended stays are guaranteed, and tickets were already acquired before most Austrians knew the draw existed. The Linz Open has hosted Sabalenka, Goff, Ostapenko, and Krejcikova, witnessing some of the finest women's tennis executed on indoor clay across the past decade. It has never encountered anything resembling what arrives April 6th. If this represents the coverage you want to continue accessing, subscribe and activate notifications, because the clay season is just beginning, and this narrative has considerable distance remaining.